Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of the Max Potential Habits podcast. So psyched you're here today again for an inspirational interview. We have on a powerhouse guest today. Her name is Layne Booth. She's the CEO of the Project Booth, and she helps business owners use proven metrics and data to grow their revenue. What really intrigued me about Layne and why I wanted to bring her on is because she decided to take the leap out of her comfy six-figure corporate role to step into her own online business. She worked nights, she worked weekends, and she was pregnant while she did this. So I thought this is a great story to bring to all of you because I know that there's a lot of you out there who are doing a side hustle, have kids, really have the dream of building something outside of the corporate world or being your own boss and deciding to take on entrepreneurship. So I wanted her to come on and share her story. So welcome to the show today, Layne.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share some inspiration with the audience today.
Awesome. Yay. I can't wait to hear more. Okay. So share with us, this is a big story. First of all, what were you doing in the corporate world?
Yeah, great question. So I started out, went through the college path, did all the things society tells you to do, got a nice job at VF Corporation. So I was actually big in supply chain. They're one of the biggest apparel companies out there in the world today. And I was the one behind the scenes planning how much should we buy of this apparel? How much should we buy of these jeans? And, when are we going to sell them and how? And from there, moving up in the corporate ranks. So went from being a planner to a manager and was continuing on in that path when I realized the higher up I moved, the less time I had with my family. And that triggered a calling for a change. And at the same time, actually, very stable, large company, but at the same time, they go through their rounds of layoffs too. And while I didn't get caught up in the layoff that was happening at the time, it was a spark to recognize that I was dispensable. They didn't owe me anything and they didn't have to keep me on. And at the same time, I didn't have a lot of freedom and flexibility while I had this, young family at home. And then it turns out another one on the way, I found out a few months later. And that was like a wake up call that, what, I could follow this plan that I thought everyone was supposed to do, or I could create something that was a win for me.
Okay, I want to dig so much here because I think this is really interesting when we think about that spark moment of pivoting in a new direction and how it gets inspired by many different things. Often, can be some big challenge in our life or something that happens in the outside world. And, as Layne and I are recording this, it's the middle of COVID. We're quarantined. It'll be released. Hopefully we will be long out of quarantine by the time this episode is released. But that's where we're at today. And I know that a lot of people are sitting in that space of going, I'm not in control of my reality at work. And it's hard to make a pivot when you're working for a company versus having your own company. So that's powerful. That's realizing you're dispensable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, and to really stack on what you said there too, Amanda, I mean, it's when you are not in control, not to where I have to have a firm grasp on every single thing that happens in my life, but for you to be able to make the pivot in the ship that you're riding on. I mean, there's so many things that you can do in your roles in corporate, but let me tell you, it really opens up when you're steering the ship of your own business.
Yeah.
And you have a lot more say and control, and honestly a lot more fun.
Yeah. Let's dig there. Because this is interesting, right? To think about the cozy comfort of corporate six-figure world versus stepping into entrepreneurship. How long did it take for you to get into that place of like, oh, this is fun?
My first client.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I mean, and I'll say it's tough to figure out, all right, moving from, corporate world to, hey, maybe I'll do this online business thing. Seems like that would work out nice. To then being like, okay, now how do I actually get clients out of this? There's this big wide world. And, I put my website up and no one seems to be, calling me. So from there, once I figured out that piece and actually got to a spot where I could find clients, that first client was basically, I put together a proposal that sounded really fun for me to help her with her business. So I picked all the things that I knew I could help her with, and I, put that together in a pretty little package. And I was excited to do it, and she was excited for it to happen, to help her business grow. So that very first one was like the icing on the cake.
Yeah, it's that moment where you're like, yes, this will work. I've got it. It's so fun. Okay, I want to ask, because to me it sounds like you were in this inspired path where you went, okay, if I'm not going to work in this world anymore and I'm going to create my own business, I'm going to create it exactly like I want to. Will you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think it's so important for people to recognize that you can make money doing what you love.
Oh yes. Yeah. So powerful. And two, I mean, I have gone through iterations. So what I'm still telling that story, honestly, like lights me up. And then where I think about now, like now I have my team helping, clients do that sort of thing. So I'll tell you too, it can pivot and change along the way.
Yeah.
But when I started, I looked at it as an opportunity of, I had all these ideas and ways I wanted to help my company, but it wasn't my boss's direction. My boss wanted me to go this direction or that direction. When I saw opportunity there, but it didn't fit in the hours in the day on top of everything else she wanted. So when I looked at, all right, how do I want to generate revenue? How do I want to make money on my own? What is something that is super easy for me to do that I can do like the back of my hand, and that honestly a lot of people think it's torture. So
yeah,
for me, and it's funny, like I love data. I can read it, I can understand it, I can tell you where your business is going by glancing at a few numbers. And for other people, I'm in awe of how they can make words like compel people. So like copywriting, I fall flat on my face every time. Show me some numbers, no problem. But then the flip is true.
Yeah.
So the things that, do not spark joy for me, that, other people are brilliant at figuring out what it is that you can do that you're great at and that you enjoy doing. Don't do something that you're great at that you hate. Throw that out there. But yeah, I mean, to bring that forward and then to just do that all the time, you even get to hone and make that skill that you already have and that you're passionate about, honestly, like go to the next level.
Yeah. One thing I asked myself when I started my business was always, how can I make money doing what I love? Just like exactly that question. Like, and I always drive my business that way. And if I notice myself feeling disinspired or kind of off in my energy, I'm like, what am I doing that I'm not aligned with? Because something, it's a guide there, and you go, okay, I really, really love this part, and this part I really need to delegate to someone else. And so I just keep guiding in that direction, so for listeners, if that's you, first, I think it's really inspirational that you were able to just go, here's what I'm good at, here's what I love doing, and here's what's marketable, and then start to get out there in that way. I'm curious, what when you said until you got the first client, how long did it take you?
Let's see. So I was still working full time. So I did start this as a side hustle. So I think it was 3 months.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I always like to have that background story for listeners who are like, but wait, was it a year? Was it a month? Okay.
And definitely like the key for getting started, talking to people you already know, and they're going to know someone that you should talk to. And then that person's going to know someone you should talk to. It's a lot of what I called coffee chats. I literally I did have, I used Acuity, and I set up a 15-minute block called coffee chat that I would throw out to as many people as, felt relevant. It seemed like we had common interests, and I just had chat after chat, and I would fill up my lunch hours. I would fill up, that 5 to 6 o'clock spot where, in Central Time and Pacific Time, it still worked for people during their work days. I just had a lot of conversations until finally, then I knew of some oh, you know what? I have a client that needs that kind of help. And then that's when it started to go.
Okay. This is so smart. Let's talk more about this, because I know that the number one challenge for new businesses is lead generation. right? So
Mm-hmm.
you did it really organically, it sounds like. When you invited people to the coffee chats, what would you say?
Ah, gosh, that's a good question. What did I say? I think it was mostly, hey, I wanted to learn more about your business and would love to share a bit about mine as well so we can, know of each other. And then if we run across people that could use our services, then we can help each other out.
Nice. Awesome. Okay. This is so valuable, because one of the biggest questions I get, when people are coming to me going, how do I start a business? They go, I don't know where to find clients. I don't know how to connect, that kind of thing. And I did a similar thing on LinkedIn recently. Let's say first, when I started my business, same thing. I didn't do it online, but I went to a lot of networking events. It was just like, okay, I'm putting on my expert hat. I'm going to start calling myself a coach, and I'm going to put myself out there, even though I have no clue what I'm doing, really. And here we go. And, people start to read that commitment decision and go, oh, you're serious. Here you are. And then exactly that, people start asking, oh, well, maybe I don't know, but I might be able to send someone your way. So it's always easiest to start with your warm market. And then, going to networking events, you create a warm market. And then there's the online market, where I recently started a LinkedIn campaign and did a similar thing. Like, I just reach out and I say, let's connect, we connect. And then I say, hey, I'm looking to create some win-wins. Would you want to hop on a 15-minute Zoom and have a conversation about how we can help each other grow our networks? And then who knows, it turns into podcast interviews. It turns into sometimes people joining my group coaching. Sometimes it turns into clients. Sometimes it just turns into a lovely conversation. So it's a really nice way to just be thinking about how to build your business for all of you listening. It's one of the biggest questions I get.
Yes.
Okay, so let's keep going here. So what was it like in the first year of business growth for you? How did that unfold? It sounds like you became a mom second time around the first year in that business.
Yes. So I did want to call out too that one of the other big things that was a win for me early on is I did recognize that I could move faster if I had a coach. So if I had someone that had gone before, had laid some foundational work, and so I did come across a resource that I really resonated with her. I was like, all right, I feel like she can knock off some months, if not years, to my journey here. So I'm a big believer in hiring experts that can expedite your path. So, wherever you are, wherever you want to go, like, it's absolutely worth researching and looking into opportunities to do that, because that first person that I worked with, basically she came on like a couple weeks before I got my first client and helped me not only, find that client, to put together a proper proposal, but then to also, all right, now how do I execute? Now, how do I deliver on that promise?
Yeah.
Because there were some things I didn't even know on that end. So, and then I've invested in other mentors along the way as well. So I would definitely call that out.
I agree. I'm, being a business coach, but I totally agree. I would not be where I am today if I had not accessed coaches. I mean, the reason I'm a coach is because the coaching worked so well for me that it changed my life dramatically. So for those of you listening, if you're looking, Layne's going to talk about her specific way that she helps people with numbers, which lots of people hate to do, and it's a very critical part of your business. For me, obviously, I know that, because I started on food stamps, I like to offer a wide variety of options for people. So I have a $97 a month group coaching program to help people in their businesses. So, I like it to be that no excuse amount where it's like, okay, I can come up with $97 to have a coach. So I like to offer that to everyone listening. And then, of course, there's one-on-one options. It's an application based, but I so agree. I'm curious for you, what do you think was the biggest thing that your coach gave you?
A set of expectations. So what should you expect when you are putting together a proposal? Like, what needs to be in there, what doesn't need to be in there, what should your pricing look like? You should get on the call expecting the yes. I mean, like, your mindset, big piece, especially when you're brand new. You feel like you have to give everything away for free. And while you can do some testing and trialing for free or, bartering early on, you don't stay there. You need to move on to those paid options there. And I feel like, a lot of, all right, now you've got the foundation. Now here's what the path forward looks like for you. So, how many coffee chats do I need to have each month to generate the next client? What do my services need to look like in the future? I kind of got my bearings with this first client, but do I want that to look the same for the second?
Yeah.
And having that person to bounce those ideas off of.
Yeah. What I hear there is the importance of tracking, which is your business so powerfully too. Before we dig into your business and talk about really money and the importance of money and business building, tell us give some tips, some practical tips about working from home and having kids and some of the ways that you navigate that, because I know a lot of listeners are in that situation and struggle with that kind of balance and some of the tips around it. So what are your biggest tips there?
Yes. First of all, I love working from home. I know some people feel like they need to get out of the house. I love walking downstairs to my, honestly, like it's a really awesome basement office. I actually have a lot of windows down here, but it's quiet, my space. I can get away. And it makes it really easy to be like, oh, well, the day's over. Let me walk upstairs and get hugs from my kiddos. So I really love the environment, but this is my space. Kids are not allowed in here 90% of the time. So having, like, I still have, start hours and end hours. I feel like that's a really important distinction, because otherwise on the weekends, it can feel like you're still in the office. And also being prepared for that first Zoom call where your kid walks in either naked or in like some sort of crazy outfit. Just prepared. Have your language ready on, sorry, I have a runaway unicorn. I'm going to need to be back in just a moment.
Oh, that's great. Yes.
Had them. My 6-year-old likes to pop in from time to time. Unexpectedly, she runs away from the nanny, and she'll hop down here and make an appearance.
Yeah. And it's so fun too when you're in the middle of a call. So it's like happening in the side and you're like, oh boy, it's going to happen. And
I've definitely done
stop it in the middle.
It feels like that CNN interview where the guy's like trying to shoo away the kids in the background.
Totally. I have that with my kids are older. So right before I ever do a podcast or things like that, I'll be like, hey kids, you can't be loud right now. But my dog it causes issues often because she loves to hang out with me in my office, but I have French doors on my office. So she can see the kids walking around out there. And so I'm like, oh, she'll whine. And then she wants to whine and come back in. I'm like, okay, this is an issue. Okay. So then I'm curious for you. You said the start and stop hours. Do you follow that pretty rigidly?
Pretty well, like definitely. I mean, at my end of my day until the kids are in bed is their time. So I'm fully present with them. If there's some, honestly, like, again, I do stuff that I love now. So if I'm really excited about a project that I'm working on, I might hop on after the kids go to bed. I'm like, oh, I really wanted to finish up this one thing or this email or respond to, my team member on certain thing. But for the most part, I mean, I'll say in the beginning when I was side hustling and figuring it out, there was a lot of nights and weekends. But now that I'm full time at home, really pretty good at keeping it at a 5 o'clock stop.
Okay. Awesome. And do you, I'm curious, like, is it because you have younger kids, do you think? Because what I'm noticing as I'm like comparing, I'm like, I definitely don't have a stop time. And it's something that I often want to work on, but then I also, they're sometimes doing their thing and we'll stop for dinner I've been loving having them home during COVID because we have family dinner every night because, as older kids, they're often out doing extracurricular and with friends and doing all these things. And so now they're all here and I'm like, yes, I have dinner with my family every night, which is great. But when they're not around, I often similarly do everything I love. And I'm like, I'll be, oh, it's 9. I should probably stop now. So do you follow that because you want to spend more time with your family? Is it something you recommend for people in terms of creating some balance in entrepreneurship? What I'm really trying to get at is like, what are some of those habits around entrepreneurship for people who are working from home with a family?
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. For me, I mean, my kids are little and they're at this really cute and snuggly stage right now where 5 o'clock, like I want to be there for them. And, when I was working in corporate, I was getting home between 6:30 and 7. And that was definitely a driver for
Yeah.
changing things. So
Yeah.
I really want to take advantage of that as often as possible to get that time with them while they're little. But I also, like, I have thought about, all right, is this going to change when they get older? And I think it might change, like, hours based, like but maybe I work 2 long days a week and I don't work the other days out of the
Yeah.
week,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like. Because at the same time, I'm building this business so that I have freedom and flexibility and impact and income. And so my long-term vision is to travel, when COVID is not rampant or prevalent, I want to go live in other countries. I want to spend time there. So I think for me, it's figuring out what that new balance looks like. But my goal is not to, I want to provide impact for my clients, but I also want to live this beautiful life that I was put on this earth for. So with that, I think it's still important to go into your work week planning what you're going to do, planning what your
Mhm.
outcomes are, and planning how you're going to achieve them, so that you don't get lost in just, oh, well, there's always one more thing. There's always one
Yeah.
more thing you can do.
Definitely.
So definitely
Yeah.
setting the expectation. Tell your days where you want them to go instead of wondering where they went.
Yeah. Smart. Okay. I want to talk to you about numbers because this is something that I know so many of my listeners, I wish you all were watching because she's like, ooh, getting ready for the mastery, so this is your jam. And I love that it's your jam because I think a lot of people avoid the numbers of their business. And,
Mm-hmm.
I often talk to people about one of the max potential habits being making sure that you're always looking at your numbers, because if you don't know where you are, how can you know where you want to go? And you need to be tracking and all these different things. So I want to hear, give us first, what is it exactly that your business does? And then we'll dig from there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we love helping fellow online businesses to really ramp up and scale their business in a way that generates more profit and more time. And so for whether it's, courses or programs or products, we show up to interpret the numbers. We really want to help you bring the data and lessen the drama as you're growing and scaling. Because if you are running from your gut, if you're shooting from the hip on every decision, you're gonna have some meltdowns happen along the way, and we want to minimize those as much as possible. And so for us, it's all about, oftentimes the way we think about it is your data interpreter. So many people, like, I can show them a spreadsheet and their eyes glaze over. But if I look at it, I can say, hey, your email list is, seeing some open rates. There's probably something wrong. Do we have an issue with X, Y, or Z? Or we can look at your Google Analytics and I can see that, this page is underperforming. What are some strategies we can do to, turn that around? I can understand it and see it, and then it becomes a very easy conversation to strategize with the CEO on how do we fix it. And by, finding those little things, those little nuggets really everywhere hidden in your business, whether it's in the marketing or the operations or the financials, then you get to continue to up level and improve your profitability without really changing the core structure of your business. And so it's a very easy, low-hanging fruit that most people aren't even aware of.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So give me an example of, I know you work with larger companies mostly.
We're tend to focus on folks that are probably multi-6 to multi-7 figures.
Okay. Okay. And so you go in and you're basically doing data analysis of the overall performance of their business based on the leads that they have coming in, the way that they're navigating and managing them, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of steps. There's a lot of things that could be happening in their business. So the way we work with folks, for an example, we worked with a Pinterest digital marketer. She had an agency where she was working with several clients, and we had to actually start at a more of a profitability on her services. So what were the services she was offering? How was that? What kind of results were her clients seeing? And how much time was it taking for her team to execute on those services? And so for her, we actually found out that, hey, one of your high-end packages is actually the least profitable. It takes up more of your time. And so it was like, all right, time and money are worse here. Like, all right, let's just take that off the table, because the clients are actually seeing just as good results, if not better, with the other service packages. So it made it very easy to say no to that when it would have otherwise been hard. Like, hey, as CEO, we want to hold on. We want to have that one-on-one time with all of our clients forever and ever. And instead, we really brought a lot of relief and, oh, well, the clients are going to see just as good of results and I don't have to do it. Great, that's done, brush off your hands and move on. And in addition to that, I mean, we were also able to prove to her clients that, hey, here's the traffic that we're driving to your website. We were able to discover that one click is worth, $2 or is worth, whether it's $2 or 2 pennies, and times the traffic. We were able to distinguish, hey, the value of the services, whether, whatever the monthly charge was, they were seeing, 10x the results on their blog traffic or on website conversions. So that's the kind of stuff that you can unlock when you know where to look.
Awesome. Okay. So I know a lot of my listeners are solopreneurs, small business on their way to the 6-7 figure mark. What are some tips that you could give in terms of ways to analyze what they have going on now? I always tell people it's really important to be doing a constant ROI review, what you're talking about. Like, where's my return on investment? Where is it the highest? And how do I analyze that? So what kind of tips could you give in that way if people are going, okay, I hear the importance of that. Where do I go to look first?
Mm-hmm. So the first thing, if you're a solopreneur, you want to make sure that whatever it is you're selling, whether it's, hours or packages or retainers, whatever it is, what is the profit margin on the services or the goods that you're offering? Because if they're not profitable, anything else you do to scale it up is just going to actually drain money from you instead of, helping you actually achieve your income goals. So it's really, and oftentimes I'll see this mistake is where, they started, offering this thing, and then they changed one or two things along the way, or they pivoted a little bit, but they kept that same price, and they haven't caught up with all the additional work and all the additional knowledge and all the additional value that they actually bring to the table now. Gotcha. And they're still, pedaling at a very slow speed on this product that really isn't serving them very well in the long run.
Okay. Well, how often would you recommend that they review?
At least annually, if not more frequently. I mean, depending on how big your business is, if you're making a fairly substantial change, you should evaluate it at that point in time. Otherwise, annually looking at your services and saying, all right, how many do I offer this package wise? Do I offer this hourly? And what kind of profit am I making? Because if you're not, depending on your model, it might be essential that you have 40% profit, or you might be able to squeak out with 15% profit on certain packages and things like that. So being very clear on that when you make a change, or at least annually.
Okay. Awesome. And I want to break it down like super practically for people. So when you say do a profit margin, like ask yourself, what's the profit margin? What does that look like on a really practical couple step basis?
Yeah. So let's say you have a $1,000 retainer package that you offer to your clients. So if you are a solopreneur, then all right, well, most of that $1,000 should be going to you, unless you have to use a lot of systems or software to make that happen. An example might be, hey, I'm using, Infusionsoft, or some sort, or maybe a scheduling tool and things like that. So hey, I've got $1,000 retainer, but it required that I have $300 worth of software to accommodate that,
right?
And that's $300 off your profit. So now we're already down to 70%.
Yeah,
so there's only $700 coming to you. And then do you have to hire a bookkeeper? So most people are thinking about that initial amount, and they're not thinking about all the things that they are purchasing within their business to support that retainer client.
Yeah.
And that's where it really starts chipping away. You might get really excited, like, oh, I found this new great software that does X, Y, and Z. Well, all right, well, that just chipped away at your retainer. So if it helped you
Yeah.
do it better, then maybe you need to increase your prices.
Yeah. Yeah. I always think about software in those, it's like you're delegating to something. So it's like hiring someone to delegate. So you analyze that cost in the overall cost of running your business. So I'm often surprised by how people overlook those things that could actually increase their profitability dramatically. So it's like just questioning I was thinking you were going to say every quarter. I was interested in the annually or more, thinking about profit margin. I guess it depends on how often you change your services and packages and what stage you're at in the game and how long standing they have been and that kind of thing. But, it's like that idea of, I always think about money mindset, how when you're responsible with your money, the universe wants to bring you more money to be responsible with, but when you neglect it, you're less magnetic. And so there's this idea of like, okay, I want to be in the dirt with my money all the time playing. And so, I love looking at my money. I'm like, ooh, what's going on here? And what's going on here? And how can I tweak this? And how can I tweak that? But I know for some people it terrifies them. So I'm curious for you, what would you say is the number one fear that you notice coming up for business owners when you're working with them and realizing that they're not doing these things? What would you say is driving that?
It's a really good question. I feel like a lot of the clients that we work with, they've gone over a lot of the hurdles that you might have as an earlier, entrepreneur.
Yeah.
The biggest thing though is wanting to do good by their clients, to make sure that they're getting a good deal, that they want to make sure their clients aren't overpaying for anything. But at the same time, I remember this example of someone that I think we worked with Tony Robbins back in the day, but they offered like free coaching for a couple months and like 30% of the people showed up. And then they offered it for $1,000 and 50% of the people showed up. And then they offered it for $10,000 and 98% of those people showed up and got the coaching.
Yep.
So I think the biggest hurdle is just understanding that the outcomes that you are getting for your clients, they need to show up too. And so understanding that money is a way for them to show up and get their outcomes is a big piece that's, it's like that unlocking point to really being able to scale at that point.
Yeah. I think it's that basic idea that's really powerful to remember, that people value what they pay for and it goes the other way too. They pay for what they value. So it's like often I've heard people doubling their fees and getting more business overnight because all of a sudden their perception is that you're providing more value. And so people are like, oh, I'll pay for that at that rate. But when it's not at that rate, I don't somehow see the value in it, which seems counterintuitive, but
it does.
Really
yes.
powerful.
And it's too, and I feel like a lot of, business owners started out as like a side hustle or, kind of like me, where they start out in corporate. And so you feel like your value is your old hourly wage.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. You've really got to throw that in the trash and start back with, what's the value that I bring to the client? What's the value that I bring to this person?
Yeah.
How is it going to change their life, their business? And that's the money mindset that you really got to dial in.
Yeah. Getting out of the hourly mindset and the W-2 kind of employee type of thing and going, it's funny because I just finished a consult and we were talking exactly about this, charging what you're worth and increasing the perceived value, and you yourself, when you don't charge what you're worth, noticing what the value you bring to the table is, so that you can, when you step into the game and you go like, here's what I charge, you have no problem saying it because you're like, I'm actually giving you 100 times what I'm charging because your long-term ROI is, it's like for what you do, if you come in and you do that diagnostic analysis of people's business and you tweak one thing and it brings them extra $1 million that year, that's huge.
Yeah. So, and what's cool too is like, I had to think that way before I saw those results.
Yeah.
Now it's really easy to think that way because I have seen our clients hit their next million. I have seen them increase by multiple six figures in 12 months. I have seen them save tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And and now it's like, well, of course, like now when I get on calls, I'm like, guys, this is a no brainer. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
just talk to, Cindy over here, just talk to Wendy, whoever it is.
Yeah.
And you can see these types of
Okay,
incredible
that's
results.
juicy. So that's so powerful because it's that concept, and I love saying this and having people really get it. It's not you see what you believe, it's you believe what you see, right? So you have to have the belief system first. But when you're new in entrepreneurship, that's very hard because you feel like an imposter because you haven't gotten there yet. So what's a good tip for people there?
Yeah, it's I did draw on my corporate experience. So I worked for a company, and the assets that I managed, basically the products I was in charge of, were basically a $400 million business. And so between me and my team, like at the end of the day, we were in charge of making sure we hit 400 million and we didn't, drop, or if we did, we better have a darn good reason as to why. And so for me, it was like, oh, well, actually, I've already done this. I've already been in charge of some really big numbers. I've already brought value. I've already seen the sales trends and told them that they needed to buy hundreds of thousands of dollars more because I could see the writing on the wall that was coming.
Yeah.
So I did have to draw on my experience, but I had to kind of look at it from a different lens.
Yeah, I like that. So for everyone listening, it's really about you perceptually seeing your own value, drawing on your past experience and the value that you've already brought to the table, because it's when you're stepping into entrepreneurship, you're using the skills you already have, what you love doing and what's marketable. So you bring that to the table and you go, okay, like maybe I haven't made it yet in this specific business because it's new or grown or just getting started, but how have I done it somewhere in the past, so that you can remind yourself, because it's just the perception of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and I still have to do that now because, when I started my business, I stuck to the product side of things. So we started out really focusing on supply chain and how we can help e-commerce. And then I started getting, into, all right, well, these online businesses need help too. And they offer programs, they offer courses, things like that. So the application of what we do for folks is fairly similar. But I hadn't done it for, this particular type of client before, but I knew, hey, if I made it from corporate to e-commerce, then I can absolutely make it to courses and programs too.
Yeah. Okay. This is so valuable because I think for everyone listening, it's, this conversation is about the process that we go through in our minds as we're building our business, and how do we navigate, because across the board, I see people going through this similar process, where they're like, I doubt myself. I'm not sure. I don't know if I charge enough. I'm not sure when to do the numbers. I don't, how often the places where people have kind of those habits that aren't setting them up for success, it's all there. So I love these conversations. So thank you for sharing your experience through the process, because, I think it's really, really helpful for people to hear that they're not the only ones going through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say too, to stack on that too, the other biggest thing is you have to sometimes take action to see, what your bearings are. So
Yes.
you can think through it, you can process it, you can put your best ideas together, but until you go and do and try, that's where the real learning takes place.
Yeah. So dive in, everyone. Stop being scared, dive in, go for it, and you'll learn along the way. All
Absolutely.
right. So tell us, what are your top 3 max potential habits that you think got you where you are today?
So I guess one we just kind of touched on is action. You've got to take action. You know what? You're probably going to make 80% right choices and 20% stinkers, and you're just going to bless and release those and focus on the 80% that you got right.
Nice. I love it.
The other piece is really follow through. I mean, if you said you were going to do something, you said you were going to try it. If you were going to attend that network meeting, follow through. You told yourself when you were in a right state of mind that this is important, that it needed to be done. So follow through and make it happen. And then the last one is kind of on in your world, Dr. Amanda, is really having a morning routine that gets your mindset in the right frame to be successful throughout your day. which is really hard for me to say as a numbers person, because I think numbers can conquer all things. But the further along I got, the more I realized that to be, a world-class leader, to be CEO of my business, to be able to lead my team as I'm growing and scaling, I've got to show up every day as a leader, as someone with integrity, as someone with commitment, as someone with drive, as someone with, a heart of a teacher. And when I sit down in the morning and I journal and I'm, hey, this is what I'm grateful for. This is, what the outcomes I'm looking for this week. That sets me up for success every single day.
Nice. These are awesome. I love action. I mean, follow through and action are aligned, right? It's like they create that positive feedback loop where you go, I actually do what I say I'm going to do. And then that develops your confidence. And as you take the action, you start to do, I like how you described it. It's like you can't, for some reason, what popped into my head was like a sailboat, like sitting in the like cove, not going anywhere. Like how are you going to go anywhere if you don't take action? And then you start to get out there and you start to realize like, oh, this is what I need. This is what I need. That's what I need. And you can't see it until you get in the mix and in the mess and in the fun of it. So those are awesome. Share with us, so I know a lot of people here are going to be interested in looking at what you have. Will you talk a little bit about like who the right person is for you and then share where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, you can find us at theprojectbooth.com. We work with those that are, in that multi six figures. So, whether you're, low six figures or you're, on the brink of that next million, once you've been in business for a couple of years, you've kind of figured out where the accelerator pedal is. We want to help you get there and optimize those little pieces along the way. So, I tell people I'm kind of like your funnel leaks fixer. So whether it's, issues on the lead generation side, whether it's issues in your back end operations, or actually all the way feeding through to your finances at the end of the day, we want to make sure that your business is really humming and running on all cylinders like a well-oiled machine. And we figure out what's broken by looking at the numbers. And then when we see what's broken, then we have an opportunity to fix it. And we partner and lock arms with our clients one-on-one to make sure that that happens.
Awesome. And you meet virtually?
Yes, we do. Big proponent of Zoom, as the entire world is familiar with this platform now.
Yeah. Good thing I bought stock in it right before this all happened.
Yeah, and the great thing about being an online business too is a lot of the software is available online. So that's a very great, it's a really nice way to partner with our clients because we can all see what's happening with their software virtually. It makes it really easy to connect and see how A is talking to B and B is talking to C with all the digital platforms and software that people are using.
Awesome. And I know it's funny because I listened to you on a few minutes of another podcast when I was like, oh, let's make sure we're a good fit and all those things. And I remember you talking about a dashboard where, it's like people can interact with it and engage with it. So, if you're out there listening and you're like, oh, this sounds incredible, I can tell that Layne is someone who helps you know what's going on in your business. It's not just like you go in and take over. You're teaching analytics, you're doing those analytics, helping diagnose, but then you're actually giving tools for people to run their business more powerfully.
Yeah, we found a lot of folks, we tend to work with mostly creative entrepreneurs. I feel like, that's kind of a similarity that we see with folks, and most people are very visual learners. So one thing's that to help our clients, we actually put your data into what we call a dashboard. So if you've got, an email software, you've got QuickBooks, and then you've got, stuff happening on social media with Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, then we actually hook onto that and pull all the metrics from all those different places into one source of truth and one dashboard where you can see what's really happening. It's kind of like your air traffic control room where you can see what's happening at all places of your business without having to log into 20 different places.
Nice.
So it's a great way to keep that thumb on the pulse of what's happening in your business without having to be everywhere and everything.
Love it. That is awesome. Okay. Any last takeaways? How about your favorite book that you're reading in the last couple months?
Ooh, I just finished Built to Sell by John Warlow. And that was a really, really interesting read. I love how, they talk about being really good at your one thing and how you don't have to do everything for everyone. By creating basically, a productized service, it makes it really easy for people to refer to you. It makes it easy to scale your business. And whether you are building your business for you, or if you do want to sell at some point down the road, then have the structure in place now to where it's very easy for you to make that decision versus feeling like you've got to scramble and restructure everything when that opportunity comes up.
Nice. I haven't heard of that one. I'm going to check it out. That is a great reference or resource. All right. Thank you so much for coming on. It was awesome to have you here today and talk about the power of numbers. You're juicy. You're juicy, love.
Yes. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for being here this week again. I hope you got a lot out of it. Rewind, listen again, and contact Layne at theprojectbooth.com. And I will be back next week with another episode to help you max your potential so you can thrive and feel alive. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Max Potential Habits podcast. If you're liking what you've heard, it would be so incredibly awesome if you would subscribe to the channel and leave a 5-star rating and a written review. This helps me help more people while we grow our NFA community so we can rock it out together. For Max Potential Habits resources, go to nfacoaching.com where you can access all of my resources. There's free ebooks, PDF checklists, a journal template, a business mindset meditation kit, and so much more. Plus, links to NFA coaching on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And if you're super serious about up-leveling, there's also a link to schedule a free consult to work with me in group or one-on-one coaching. Until next time, I hope you have a Max Potential Habits Day where you get inspired to do whatever it takes to transform into the most empowered version of yourself so you can lead a rich, thriving, kick-ass life and business.